Hey there, I'm Carmen.
And I'm Kristine. We're so glad you're here.
You can find links to connect with us in the show notes. So let's get started. Hello, greetings, everybody. Hey, Kristine.
Hey, Carmen. Hey, everybody. So good to see you today. Thanks for joining us.
Yes, it's good to have you back.
Thank you so much. It's been a
Yes,
few
yes,
months. It
it
has been a few
has.
months.
It
So I'm
has.
happy to be here, happy to be back.
Yeah, yeah, it's good to have you back. So let's get right to our topic. We always like to kind of jump right in there so we
Yeah.
honor their time, our listeners' time. So our topic today is holding on to faith when your struggle returns. So, Kristine, I was just hoping that you would kind of let our listeners know why we chose this topic.
Yeah, we were talking a little bit about this and thought it would be a good topic for us to cover. Of course, personally, when I stepped away a few months ago to take a little bit of a break, many of our listeners, if you've been with me, been one of my subscribers for a while, or maybe read one of my books, you know that I'm a cancer survivor. I've been cancer free for 6 years. And recently I had a struggle return. Not the exact same struggle, but
Mm-hmm.
related to that struggle of cancer before. And so it has looked different from what I did before, but I've experienced a lot of difficult things going on in my mind and my emotions related to
Right,
that struggle coming back and
right.
feeling like I thought I was past it and
Yeah,
dealing with all of that
yeah.
comes back at you. And I realized I'm probably not the only one. You know, there's a lot of people that deal with a health struggle that they
Mm-hmm.
feel like they've been healed from or gotten past that returns. Or it
Yeah,
may not even be, a health struggle. It might be you may have been caring for an ailing loved one and you feel like you've gotten past it. You could take a deep breath and have some peace, have some
yeah,
comfort in that, knowing that you've gotten past it. And then, boom, something else hits that
yeah,
you're having to go through. Or it might be someone in your family who's been dealing with something or struggling with something that affects your whole family, like addiction or something
mm-hmm.
else along those lines that you feel like they've recovered from it and then are struggling with it again and what that can
Mm-hmm.
feel like the second time around. So, yes, I hope that if you're going through something like that, that what we say today
Mm-hmm.
brings you some comfort and peace and some encouragement in your struggle.
Yeah, yeah, right. Um, I think that if every person has had a struggle return in
Mm,
one way or another,
yeah.
financially, there's just so many things. You always hear when it rains, it pours. That's the old saying, and you think, I am not going to claim that. But I think everybody, in one way or another, has had a struggle return. They've had to revisit something.
Yeah, yeah. I think through my own personal experience, I identified some things that I struggle with, and I think
Mm-hmm.
some of us, or many of us, may struggle with. And
Mm-hmm.
so we're going to talk about four of those things. And the first one is doubt. And we're going to talk a little bit about Gideon.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep. We talked a little bit about Gideon in a previous episode. His story is just filled with so many real life examples for us to use. Um, but his story is just a good picture. His good picture of that first feeling that we have of usually the first feeling, I guess, would be doubt. His is a really good picture about that. And we're going to find his story in Judges 6 through 8. But I think there was a specific area of scriptures that we wanted to focus on.
Yeah, yeah, there's something that I noticed about his, and I need to find the link to that episode when we talked about Gideon because there was some good information there. So I'll try to
Mm-hmm.
find that and put it in the resources for you in case anybody
Mm-hmm.
wants to revisit that. But I think that doubt can happen when we try to understand why we're having to go through this again.
Yeah.
And so we are going to look at a few verses in Judges chapter 6, verses 12 through 14.
Yeah.
That's the point where the angel of the Lord comes and visits Gideon to tell him what he's going to be doing.
Mm-hmm.
And it says that when the angel of the Lord appeared to him, he said, Mighty hero, the Lord is with you. And I love that because, he tells him right off the bat, the Lord is with you. So it's almost like there's no reason to doubt what's going on here. God is
Yeah.
with you.
Yeah. He
But
affirms him too. He calls him a hero. I
yeah,
mean, when
yeah.
he felt so much less than a hero, the angel of the Lord says, no. You know, those feelings are not valid. You are a hero, you
Right.
know. Yeah.
And then Gideon really just kind of puts a stop to that right there and says,
Right.
Sir, if the Lord is with us, why has all this happened to us? And I identify with that so much because, I asked that same question as soon as I heard what the diagnosis was.
Hmm.
There was a lot of lamenting, and the lamenting is important. We've talked about that
Right.
too. But I, went to God and cried out to him and said, If you brought me through this before, why is this happening again? Why are
Yeah,
you
yeah.
allowing this?
Right.
That just like what Gideon said. And from Gideon's story, I could see it in perspective that Gideon goes on to say, where are all the miracles our ancestors told us about? So
Hmm.
Gideon shows us right there. He knows the stories. He knows that God performed miracles.
Yeah, yeah.
He goes on to say, Didn't they say the Lord brought us up out of Egypt? But now the Lord has abandoned us and handed us over to the Midianites. Then the Lord turned to him and said, Go with the strength you have and rescue Israel from the Midianites I am sending you. So Gideon basically says, we know what the Lord did before, but so if he's here, really, why is he abandoning us now? And I think that's how we can feel sometimes right at the beginning of that struggle is
Right.
doubting whether or not God can. So if we can take that, if we can take what we know that God has done for us in the past and turn that around and use that to reassure us that He
Right.
can do it.
Yeah.
He did it for us before and He can do it again. And just tell ourselves that, Lord, I know you did it before, and that means you can do it again.
Yes, yes. Thinking back, I mean, that is such a faith builder. Thinking back where he was, what he did for you in the past, how he showed up. Think remind yourself of his character, his love for us, his faithfulness. I mean, all those, his justice, all the things that is his character that we know about God. Reminding yourself of those things. Um, that that helps build our faith.
It does. It does. Knowing his past, his track record, God has a good track record.
He
And
does.
we look back at his faithfulness in our own life when we're here. And also I've noticed, just as I've been going through this first leg of my struggle, it's like a season and it's kind of an extended season. And I'm in a
Hmm.
good place right now of being able to kind of rest and take a break and looking back at how he's gotten me through the first part of that.
Hmm.
There's been some faith builders already that I can see how he's been there and has orchestrated things and put things together exactly as they need to be. And
Right.
that's
Yeah.
helping build my faith for the next leg of the journey.
Hmm.
And so that's something that I would encourage listeners to. It's hard right in the middle of the struggle. But sometimes that's the time when I throw my hands up and say, okay, Lord, I I can't do anything here. It's all up to
Hmm.
you.
Hmm.
And sometimes that's the thing that I need to do the most is to remind myself, like you said, his character and that he is in complete control of the situation.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, I know that there's the I'm kind of struggling here for words, y'all. The doubt that overwhelms us in so many ways because we want to, like you said, control the situation. And we want to know the end from the beginning. We want to
Mhm.
know how this thing is going to end up. There's so many things. But more importantly, we just think, I don't think I want to do this again. I don't think I can do this again,
Mm.
you know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that feeds into the doubt too, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. And then, in the New Testament, a man brought came to Jesus about his sick child and
Yeah,
uh and he confessed, I believe, but help my unbelief. And I prayed that prayer before too. And if you think about the unbelief that he's talking about, I really feel like it was just doubt. He
that's
believed
true.
God would do it, but will he do it for his kid? I mean,
Yeah. And
that kind
that's
of
hard to
thing.
do when you see other people going through struggles too.
Yeah.
That's hard to do because we tend to compare and look at what other people's situations, but God has the big picture.
Yeah.
And so if we can just trust him with our situation and those others that are happening too, and know that He's going to work all things together for our good, even if we don't feel it in that moment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's right. That's right.
Well,
Uh,
another thing that I think from Gideon's story that can come against us that we need to be
mm-hmm.
aware of,
Yeah.
that can sneak up on us is fear.
Yeah.
Fear is
Yeah.
a biggie when a struggle returns. And a couple of reasons for that. First of all, yes, there's always fear of the unknown. We don't know what's going to happen.
Right.
But I think, like you mentioned before, when we have a struggle return, that means I also remember what I went through and how difficult it was.
Yeah. Yeah.
And God brought me through it. But when fear comes, every hard thing,
Mm-hmm.
every traumatic thing that
Mm-hmm.
I went through starts to come back to mind.
Mm-hmm.
And I start getting scared, afraid of going through those things again. And
Right.
I think it's important, and you mentioned before to me that just because we went through it and it looked this way the first time,
Yeah.
it may not look that way again. We just,
Right.
we think we know, but we can't possibly know the outcome. And sometimes God is doing a new thing in
Yeah.
us.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So if we can trust Him with that,
Mm-hmm.
then not let what we went through before scare us,
Mm-hmm.
maybe give us some wisdom. It can give us some wisdom of some things that we learned from before that we could apply this time and make it
Right.
even a little easier working through those fears. But anyway, I think that's why it's a little bit different when you're going through a struggle again. For me, it's like that, having that trauma from going through it before.
Yeah. Yeah. And I can remember in some of our past conversations, I've asked God to just surprise you because I knew right off when you told me that those thoughts and feelings were going to return to you about what you had done, but what you had been through before. And I've just continued to pray and ask Him to surprise you that it won't be, it'll be different. It won't be the way that it was before. And, um, and I think we can ask those kind of things. There's a lot of verses about fear, many of them, and many of them. You
Yeah.
mentioned yesterday that somebody told you there was 365 or something like that, one for every day, and I'm thinking I wouldn't be surprised because that's just a really biggie. And I've written several different things about fear because that's something I navigate in my own life is navigating fear. Um, you had a great verse though from Psalms that I probably heard before and just forgot, but I made a note of it, put it in my little card stack that where I have verses about different things that I struggle with, and my little index card thing. And I'm that one, write that one down because I didn't have that one written down.
Yes, and I love it because it's short. Don't we love those short
Mm-hmm.
verses? And
Yeah.
I've
Yeah.
noticed a lot of the verses about fear are short. And I love that because when I'm afraid or when fear hits, that's the hardest time for me to recall a verse. I don't
Mm-hmm.
know
Yeah.
if it's, like panic or whatever sets
Mm-hmm.
in. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to recall a verse and I just can't. And a lot of the
Yeah.
fear verses are super short and easy. And this one
Mm-hmm.
is Psalm 56 and 3. So if you guys want to make a note of that, I like it in the English Standard Version because it says, "When I am afraid, I put my trust in you."
Mm-hmm.
Super simple. It reminds us that that's the key to breaking free from the fear that hits us is
Mm-hmm.
trusting Him, which is always, I've been real open about my struggle with that and written a lot
Mm-hmm.
about trusting God and how hard that is for someone who likes to be in control.
Yeah.
But also it says when I am afraid, and that acknowledges it's going to happen. And
Mm-hmm.
so I have a tendency to beat myself up sometimes when if I'm afraid and I think, well, that doesn't mean I'm trusting God, it means
Right.
I
Right.
don't
Right.
trust God, and I kind of get down on myself. But to
Mm-hmm.
say, okay, I'm afraid. When I'm afraid, I'm going to put my trust in you. I'm going to go to you with this, Lord. And just like we talked about with doubt, the sooner the better.
Yes. Yes. Once fear settles in,
Hmm.
you start to feel panic. There's just so many things that come over you once fear that goes along with fear. So the quicker that you can address it and remind yourself who's in control, that everything that goes on in your life filters through God's hands, that he does allow things in our life, but he is. kind and gracious, and he wants good things for us. So,
Yes.
all those things you have to remind yourself when fear begins to set in, because then you start to panic, then you start having physical reactions, and sometimes you start making decisions that you wish you wouldn't have made because you did it out of fear. So that's a big one. There's a lot of do not fears and fear nots, and so he understands us. He understands he made us. He understands that we can become overwhelmed with things we don't understand, uh, or things that we just don't know about. And
Yes.
he completely understands that. You mentioned
That's
it
true.
earlier. Fear of the unknown is a biggie. Fear
Hmm.
of the unknown is a biggie. Well, Christina, I think that we've covered two that are such a big part of struggles in general, and especially when struggles return, doubt and fear.
Yes, and we have more
Yeah,
to talk about with this. So we are running out of time today, and we want to honor your time, everyone. So we'll pick this back up in our next episode, and we'll talk about two more things that can pop up and come against us when our struggle returns. So
yeah,
you'll definitely want to join us for that. But before
yeah.
we close, I do want to mention a couple of resources that Carmen has that I'm going to put the link to in the show notes. And one of those is When Fear Overwhelms Our Hearts. And then
Hmm.
she also has it's a podcast episode, right?
Right,
3 ways
right.
to combat fear.
Hmm.
So I'll put the link to that if you'd like to study a little bit more on fear before we get to the next episode. So you'll want to check those out for sure.
Yeah, yeah. This has been a good discussion. Good
It has been
reminders
a
for
good
me.
discussion. Yeah,
Yeah,
I've
yeah.
enjoyed it.
Yeah. Well, y'all don't forget to subscribe and follow. If you're watching us on YouTube, you need to subscribe. If you're listening to me on your favorite podcast player, then you need to follow, because we
Yes,
got some upcoming things that
that's right.
we've got some past episodes that we've mentioned that you can go back and listen to, and then we have our watch if you want to see us. Some people like to see, who's talking. So that would be great. And then you just get notified quickly about those. And you won't have to wait to hear from us to tell you that they're dropped.
That's right. Yep. We're
Yep.
glad y'all are with us, and
Yeah.
we'll be sure and catch you next time.
Yep. Talk to y'all soon. Bye.
Bye, everybody.